I'm using a Rodecaster video, so I have a backup recording just in case.
Nice, cool, dude. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this is But when you said, "Hey, is it Riverside?" I'm like, oh, yes, because often I do a lot of recordings with pastors, and they're not known for their technological advancement, and so, but that's awesome. Well, welcome back to the podcast, guys. We have a really cool guest on today. Do you go by Tim or Timothy? It says Timothy on my screen.
It does. I go by
Timothy. Tim Alcorn, man. We talked a little bit before this, but doing a lot of interesting things with your life. I'm super excited about it. Love the church, love storytelling, and that's what we love. And so I'd love to have a conversation with you, and so hopefully people can learn from this conversation so that we could always keep pushing people to become the best storytellers they can possibly be. So welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So you said before we got on that you do marketing, social media management, brand positioning for faith-based churches and nonprofits. Tell me a little bit about one of the things that you see is one of the biggest issues in churches or faith-based organizations positioning their self in the space that they're in.
Yeah, I would say one of the in regards to like tech and social media and stuff. I would say one of the biggest issues is probably just churches transitioning. I like to say that we're living through the biggest communication shift in human history. And, there's other YouTubers and stuff that would agree with me on that. I'm not alone in that. And the church in general typically is rather slow to change. And that is, I think, for a multitude of reasons, some good, some bad, some people are in the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But sometimes they have their Christ goggles on and they can't see that something is broken. And sometimes it's a capacity thing. Pastors who have small staffs and they're preaching every single week and there's no one to fill in for them. They don't have capacity to think of changes. They don't have capacity to learn more. And sometimes it's a stubbornness thing. Sometimes pastors will hear AI and they'll just be like, I don't need AI, I have Jesus, and which
Right.
you do need Jesus, but something I said before we hopped on is Paul, who is the most famous church planner in history. He always used tools and language and tactics that were available to him, not just in the time, but in that location that he was planting in. And so I think the stubborn pastors they need to kind of think about that a little bit, and consider implementing some of these. But I think it's just the church can be slow to change, and that can be kind of a hindrance to adapting to this new style. Did that answer the question? I think it did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. So for me, it's so interesting because there's something sacred about spirituality. There's something that if it's changing too much, then is it as sacred as people thought? And if we're changing too much with the times and the culture, and then where is the unique? Where is the holy? Where is the set apart of that? If we're just that's what the culture does. That's what we do. And so I feel like that's a tension that some pastors hold. I agree with you. There's some pastors that are just like, ain't broke, don't fix it. Man, I got my 100 people. We're solid. We love the Lord, and we're gonna wait till He comes back. I'm doing my thing. But at the time, I think there's to weigh these things and where we spend our time and resources and something like that. So in this conversation, which can go a bunch of different ways, if a pastor is listening and considering doing anything, it's either putting more attention into social media to scale the message, if it's utilizing AI, if it's doing something brick and mortar to kind of zig where everybody's zagging, everybody's online, we're gonna double down on in person. If they could do one thing in your experience, what you see is working well, or something that a hot take coming in the future, what would be one thing that you would think every pastor should consider doing in the rest of this year, maybe even into 2026?
Yeah, I would say you never want to change who you are or your voice. There's tons of different pastors, tons of different styles for a good reason, because there's a lot of different people out there. But if I were to recommend one thing to every church, every pastor, it is get on social media. Do it. Just get on social media in any way that you have capacity to do. Like, you don't have to go out and spend a whack ton of money. Social media is free. But the reason why I say that is because the generation who, and this is going to sound dramatic, so hear me out. The generation who can live without social media is going away. And the generation who grew up on social media is here to stay. And they're I didn't mean to rhyme there, but they're here, and that's where the people are. Often biblically, people would go to where the people are and preach the message. They didn't always expect them to come to them and to come through their doors. They would meet the people where they're at. I hate to say it, the world's going digital. The world's going virtual, and getting on social media is like, if you really want to dive into it, is kind of like the basic line of like where people are digitally. But I think if you're on social media and you don't change a thing about your voice, your style, your tactics, you stay true to who you are, but you get online. I think that's the number one thing people can do.
That's interesting. I love that you say it that way, because it's so potent. Because you think, for you and me, specifically in our spaces and what we're trying to do and the value we're trying to add, saying that we're in a digital age feels like, duh, of course. Saying that out loud already makes me feel and frustrates me, if I can be totally candid with you, that we're even having to have this discussion, because you're like, I don't know why I'm called to the church, because it's the most frustrating, or the people that in it are the most frustrating, because like how we have to say these things. But you saying, hey, the generation that can live without social media is going away rapidly, and not changing who you are and your voice, but just being a part of the conversation is like, that's level one, right? That's white belt stuff, and being a part of that. So that's really interesting that you say that. And what do you think?
Can I give you a crazy, before we move on from that?
Talk to me. I want crazy. I love crazy.
So this is, in full disclosure, I have not gone and verified this, but it's one of those stats that you read that both shocks you and also you think, yeah, makes sense. So I read a stat the other day that was Gen Beta, who's the generation who's currently being born right now. It was either 13 or 15%, but like 13% of them will marry someone who is not real. Someone who is a robot, who is AI, who's virtual.
Come on.
But they will marry someone who is not real. So that is, if it scares you, it should. That's a scary thing. The world needs Jesus. But it gives you a baseline of where society is going when it comes to utilizing technology. And so just getting on social media platforms, being a part of the conversation, as you said, is like the basic step that everyone should be doing.
Where does being equally yoked with your partner come when, if you have an AI partner, you just program Christianity in there and you're set to go? That feels like to me, right? So you're not worried about them going crazy on you. It's a robot. I get it.
Yeah, it's...
Because I heard Gary Vee say that, bro. You say that. I saw, because he was talking to two guys.
Yeah, he did say that.
And they're like, hey, give me a hot take. And Gary's like, hey, I believe your grandchildren will marry an AI human. And they're like, how strong do you feel about that? 100%. Like, he did not, unequivocally, hard, full stop, 100% your grandchildren will marry an AI human. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because you hear these AI conversations, Tim, right? There's two kinds of, the bell curve on AI, it's taking every possible job that's ever going to be, and we're living in the Matrix in 15 minutes. Or it's just a better Google, and it writes better. It's not that big of a deal. It's a bubble. Chill out. Yeah. And then obviously there's somewhere in the middle. And so that's wild that you say that, because I did hear that, and it sounds insane.
Yeah. It
but
does,
ChatGPT, if you explain ChatGPT to my dad when he was born in 1960 and tell him in 1970 when he was 10 that you could put a prompt, which he wouldn't know what that is, into a laptop, which he wouldn't know what that is, and it would kick out this in 3 seconds, he wouldn't be able to communicate. He wouldn't be able to comprehend what I was saying. So, like, I have no idea, right? That's craziness, though. But you're saying, for me, is like, this is a little dated reference already, but the Kendrick Lamar halftime show. That was the thing a week after the halftime show. Yeah. And my philosophy when it comes to speaking to culture or politics or whatever, if on Monday after, in your church staff meeting, you're like, what about the halftime show? What are we going to do? And you guys talk about it, and you decide, hey, we're not going to talk about it. I think that's fine. My only conversation, if you're not talking about it at all, I think we have a problem, right? I think we have, and maybe even not a problem, an opportunity. Because if it's like, hey, if you don't have people around you that even watch the halftime show and you didn't mute it and go eat your chili and whatever and then come back, again, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to try to be a cool pastor and stitch this thing and react to this thing. But if you're not even having a conversation about what everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people are having, I think there's an opportunity to just be a part of the conversation so that it can not influence or even potentially inform, but just have a conversation around. And then we're going to go back to teaching the Bible on Sunday, but I know what's happening in the world around me. I believe Paul was informed of what was going on in Ephesus, what was going on in Corinth. It didn't change the truth of his message, but it potentially could have changed the place he gave it, and where he went, and it affected the letters. Right? It affected what he was talking about, what was going on in these churches. And so for us to kind of stick our head in the sand seems such a miss, and even anti-Jesus and anti-Paul, like Paul. And like, that's not what they did. So obviously we can get lost in this space too, my man. I know that. And we can get really lost. But, I don't know. That's because I love this conversation, man. I could have this conversation forever. So it's like, what would you go ahead.
Oh, yeah, let me give you a quick story about that. Is one of my friends, he's a pastor, but he's unpaid. He has a full-time job that he does. And him and I were talking about that logistic, because right now I'm doing ministry unpaid because I'm running my company and stuff. And him and I were talking about the logistics of like, hey, so because I went from full-time paid, salaried ministry to like I'm running my company and I'm doing ministry for free. We were talking about the logistics of how that works. And he said he came from a church where every staff member, including the lead pastor, were all part-time. It wasn't a budgetary thing. It was they wanted the people to have jobs in the world so they could stay up to date with the community, with what people are doing. They didn't want, the pastor, the green room pastor, the office pastor who never like went outside. Nothing wrong with green rooms or offices, but when you're living in there and you're never communicating with the community, that can lead to issues. And so every staff member was part-time, and they had other jobs outside so they could be with the community. And there's something that tactic will not work for a lot of churches, and I know that, but it shows the importance of staying up to date with what's going on culturally, what's going on with your people. How are you going to communicate with your congregation if you have no idea what they're living through? And so it just highlights the importance of that.
I love that, man. And again, I pastors here at, like, we can hold two thoughts on our head. We can hold the fact that that's an interesting thing that a church does. That doesn't mean you have to do that. But here the message from me is, if you're speaking to people, whoever your target audience is, if you don't have any proximity to them, how are you going to speak with them, right? Jesus spent time. He walked the streets. Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house. He sat and laid by tables and ate and spent time and then would preach to them. So, like, those parables weren't, again, he's Jesus, so I know it's tough, right? The guy knows everything. So, like, that's a tough standard. But his parables were connected to what they did and stories that connected to what their everyday was. If you don't know the everyday anymore, like the word relevance makes me uncomfortable because of what the last 20 years of what the church did to that word. But I love what you say, the proximity to the market. Doesn't mean you have to quit your job and go work in a cubicle. But if you don't have either staff that are keeping you connected, or you yourself through small group, through you working at a coffee shop, through being a part of these things, if you don't understand the average family's financial plight, and you're going to get up there and tout generosity and tithing and these things, you will seem like you are in a Eiffel Tower, that you are so disconnected to the thing, and you become a Pope type figure. And some people will rock with that. Yeah, but I think if we're trying to reach people, it's hard to reach them if you're not close to them, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like I love that. I've heard a couple guys that do that. I have a great friend, a church in Knoxville, Tennessee called Midtown. All the staff are paid the same across the board, all the same salary, which I think is interesting. And like you said, it's not a budgetary thing; it's philosophy. And do with that what you will. But also the pastor and everybody. Pastor has a landscaping and like hand to plow job. And could he increase his salary at the church? Yes, but there's just something that he wants. It's just just a different philosophy of how to do ministry. And I really like that. And I think as things change and as people start looking at the church and finances and tax-free and all these different things are coming around, I don't know. I wonder how this will all shake down in the long run.
I think if churches got comfortable with the idea of bivocational ministry, or got comfortable, like maybe certain people got comfortable with doing ministry like for free. I don't know how it is where you are, but in California, people like almost scoff at like the idea of doing ministry for free. It's just like, oh, you're doing all that and you're not paid. Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm just like, bro, this is life. This is my mission. Like, what are you talking about? But like, I think if churches got used to the idea of like bivocational ministry, there's a possible shift coming that will make finances hard for some churches. And I think if you're already comfortable with that idea, you'll be set up in a great spot to where no matter what the world throws at you, you can not only survive, but thrive. Yeah.
And again, I don't think this podcast is not for churches not to pay their pastors. And that's not,
my dad was worth their wages,
Yeah, my dad, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. Like, I get it. And God, there's a lot of cool things in the Bible about abundance, and I don't think money's bad. The love of money is. And I think people are called to money. And I don't know that this is, I could literally be making this up. And so, but I think there are some people that are called to have money.
Yeah.
And they just know, and especially in the kingdom specifically. They just are super generous. They know how to make money. They know how to make their money make money. And those people fund the kingdom. I don't know if you're listening and I don't know how you feel about the church and the tax-free status and how much money goes to the church and how much tithe dollars go to the church. But the American church, if you look at it statistically, is one of the most generous entities on the planet. It just is. When bad things happen, the church shows up and or church of adjacent ministries with 18-wheelers. They are there with resources. They are on the ground when Asheville happens, when the fires in LA happen. Churches rally and or church-funded ministries rally. Yeah. But, so I have no issue. It takes money. That's not a problem. But it just, I don't know. I love what you're saying about that and figuring out just how to, what it looks like going forward.
I think it's hilarious, but some people might not. But I have a funny story about this. There's a church locally here. Their headquarters is local here. They're all friends of mine. I love them. It's Vive Church. If you're near one, check it out. But they spent I think it was something like $35 million on a building, right? And it was a big, we're in California. Real estate's expensive here. It's expensive.
Right.
It's a big building and it's nice, but it's in the middle of like Mountain View, which is one of the most expensive cities in the Bay Area, which is one of the most expensive areas in the state, which is one of the most expensive state, whatever, it goes on and on. But people were just like, how could you use, that much money to buy a building? And then it's just like, hey, someone drew the parallel of just like, people spend like $200 million on a Super Bowl, so some guys can throw a ball around for a couple hours and entertain a bunch of people. But when it comes to a building where people are gonna meet their eternal salvation, lives will be changed, addictions will be broken, people will be helped, people will be loved, people will be cared for. Suddenly, a fraction of that amount is too much money to be spending on a building. No. And that church, they had a lot of investors who were sold out on Christ, who were just like, hey, how can we use our funds to help you achieve this mission? People who were instrumental in bringing companies from 10 million to 100 million, and they're just like, hey, we God has blessed us. How can we bless the church? And so you're right, 100%. The love of money is terrible, but money in itself,
for sure,
it's how things work, sometimes.
There's nothing wrong with a hamburger, but if you eat McDonald's every day, it's going to be a problem. I couldn't agree 100%. More with what you're saying. And so, because that's the thing, and I'm really great with the world looking at the church differently, and it should. Mm-hmm. We're held to a different standard. So yeah, you see a $35 million price tag on a whatever, and you see this thing, double taken, it's fine. I'm cool with that. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to, whatever. But it is interesting when you said 200 million. We're talking about $1 billion on some of these new stadiums, and that's not. And that's capitalism. Some still people think anything that involves capitalism is evil, and that's their prerogative. But when the church spends money, it's looking differently. And I think we should. If they're looking different, we definitely should. And that's what we talked about this offline before. But there is a death of denomination of sorts. But at the same time, what I like about denomination and or some sort of spiritual, financial, and organizational oversight is missing in the American church, I think. Especially with the rise of evangelical church planting. And we have a board of overseers. They're not here, and they're my friends, and we go hunting together, but they don't know the day-to-day. They have no idea how I treat my staff. They don't know how much I pay for myself, how much I travel, where the checks and balances are with a $5 million annual budget. And sometimes, so to your point, spend as much money as you can on getting people around digitally or in person and tell them about Jesus. Spend it. Every dollar we got. We can't take it with us. But,
100%.
Big, gigantic but, you need to have people in your life that know the money, know the budget, know your power of the budget, and have some oversight and need checks and balances. I think absolute power absolutely corrupts.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was just my wife's pregnant. We go on walks a lot, and we were walking. Second one. Yeah, love it. Born in the next couple weeks, any day now. But
come on.
We were on a walk last night, and I was just like, hey, like there's something that has been like bothering me lately, and a little bit of context. I'll plant a church sometime in the future. We kind of talked about the journey to that offline, but when I was at a church plant, and stuff happened, and I left the church plant to get training to plant a church, and I had an opportunity to I had a building, which is unheard of in this area for a church. I have a building. I had a team. I had a launch team that was like 75% of the way of like what ARC recommends you launch with. ARC, Association of Related Churches, big church planting network.
Oh yeah, I know ARC well. Shout out.
If anyone's watching, you don't know, check them out. They're great. They're planting tons of churches, but
they are.
But I was like right there. All I had to do was like a little push, a little fundraising, and then I could launch. And I thought about it, and I'm just like, yeah, that's a bad idea, because I would be launching with no covering, no accountability. Like, sure, I could throw a board together tomorrow who would be like pastors, friends of mine that I get coffee with and hang out. But just like you were saying, like, they don't know the day-to-day. Like, I would have no one to submit a budget to like look it over and be like, yeah, this makes sense. And so that's the context around this. But we were talking about a couple other pastors that we know who and I wasn't saying that they were doing anything wrong, but like a situation that they're in is like could be dangerous, because we were talking about the American evangelical church. We're planning churches like crazy, which is awesome. I love it. New churches coming up. That's great. But there seems to be a huge lack of accountability. And some of these churches, they're not, formed as a 501c3, organization. So legally they don't need a board. So some of them don't have a board. Right. And like where is your accountability? Because like when you're on a Sunday, when you're preaching on a Sunday, and like let's say the theology starts to slip, which is if you're not constantly being checked and studying the word and all this, it's easy to do when you're preaching. Right. It's easy to put in your own thoughts that actually aren't biblical. But when your theology starts to slip, who's there to check you? And preaching false gospel is a serious thing that you need to like really check yourself on all the time. I've preached a lot of sermons. I've done a lot of youth messages. I've done a lot of young adult messages. I try to run my notes by another pastor to just check the theology, because like it is so easy to accidentally just kind of input your own opinion. And saying your opinion is fine. But when you're saying your opinion as biblical truth and it's not right, that can get dicey. So, oh man,
Yeah.
I don't even know if that has anything to
the
do with
Bible,
what we're talking
a
about.
millstone. A verse, a millstone around your neck it comes to mind when pulling people away, and even if it's an accident. That's the tough part. So that's why Paper Giants does what we do, man. Raising biblical literacy matters a lot to us. I think biblical discovery is at an all-time high. Bible sales are up. People are asking more questions than ever. I think questions are awesome. That's why I love where we are in this space, in this podcast, and these conversations. And hey, pastors, like, do we have enough self-awareness? Do we have enough curiosity to not change the Bible? That's not what anyone's asking you to do. Some people are, but that's not what I'm asking you to change the way you see our audience, even potentially the way you share with that audience. Because, man, let's not get it twisted, Tim. Like, when's the last time the church changed in a major way? Multi-site? Is that the biggest thing? Which is just it's a franchise. That's not a change. It went, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's been preaching and singing for a minute.
Yeah.
And it's biblical. It's fine. Worship's great. Or corporate worship's great. And sitting down and listening to a guy talk for 30 minutes is great. It's fine. It's cool. Awesome. But like that, is that it? And is that the only expression that we can do on Sunday mornings? And is it that's that way 52 times a weekend and all these different things? And if you don't jive with that, you're not for us. You're not with us. You're taking your kid to baseball on Sunday morning now. You got a heart issue, and you're not doing this way. You're not coming to our brick and mortar shop, doing our thing our way. And it's like, that feels strange to me. Not to throw away the baby with the bathwater. Keep doing it, man. I've been to some church, incredible. I go every Sunday. It's awesome. But I wonder, is there another way? Are there other ways to introduce people to the message of the gospel? And the New Testament shows me that corporately is a way to celebrate, but not a way to potentially even share the gospel. It is breaking bread together. It's going out in the community. It's being generous. It's being there. It's being so different. Like you said earlier, when people say, hey, you do all that for free? Like, that's it. That's the question. That's why we do what we do. So that you ask me that. Isn't that crazy? It is crazy. You know why? Because I believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
That's not normal. Of course it's not normal. What about money? I'm not worried about money. Why? And you're in, bro. We're in. Like, that's the thing. And so I don't know. That's what I'm crazy about, and obsessed with stories and telling them and figuring out how we can do it better. So,
one thing, I have some interesting. Oh yeah, I know. I love ranting. I have some interesting thoughts on that because, like, I will say, like, the gathering of the saints, corporate worshiping together in community on a Sunday, like, I believe that's important, that's biblical, that's a staple in our faith. And so I don't think that is something that should go away. But I do 100% think what about Monday through Saturday? Like,
right.
Like that shouldn't be the only place. Sunday morning Christians, that's a real known thing. It's like, you're a Christian on Sunday, and, Monday through Saturday, you're just one of everyone else. That should not be the only place. I had a heart check one time where, and it's funny because you brought up the playing ball on a Sunday morning instead of going to church. I had a heart check. This person was, they were going through some struggles, having a hard time with their faith and everything. And then I noticed that their attendance on Sunday morning was really spotty, and I was just and this is dumb. Don't do this. Don't do what I'm about to say. I learned, but I said, hey, you're probably struggling with your faith because you're not going to church. And I made that.
Yes, Tim. Yes,
I made that assumption.
You're a sinner.
And right here, the target. Here's the target. Boop. Because you know what they told me? They're like, oh, I just go in the evenings. Like, I go to the 5 p.m. service, and I'm like,
oops.
Oh, whoopsie.
Whoops.
Whoops. And so it's like, is there another way? Yeah, there's tons of ways. Like, if the second you're locked into Sunday morning, 10 a.m., 9:30, 11, whatever it is, Sunday morning service is the only way to share the gospel.
Right.
You're not an evangelist. You're a public speaker.
For sure.
You're not doing what Jesus did. You're cherry picking the things that he did that you like, and you're leaning into that. Which some people, I will say, if your strength is public speaking and preaching on a Sunday, lean into that. But if you're a church, if you're a body of people, if you have different arms working together as one body to do one mission, if your strength as a lead pastor is public speaking from a stage on Sunday to people, and you can do that in a way that everyone can understand what you're saying, everyone can learn, everyone can relate, and be, learn more about the Bible and learn more about Jesus. If that's your strength, lean into it. Do that. Like, don't try to be something you're not. But there should be someone on your team who is really good at facilitating small groups. There should be someone on your team who is really good about going into public schools and starting Christian clubs. Like, all of these different things. Your church ministry should not end when service ends. It is a 7-day-a-week thing.
I love that, and I'm going to go on another rant. Hold on to your horses. Is the irony, Timmy, for me, is pastors rail against cultural Christians, and there's a very easy argument to make that we made culture Christians. Like, so you don't like it that all we do is Sunday. Pastor, okay, show me your budget and how much of it goes to Sundays and everywhere else. Show me your LED package budget. Show me your worship staff's budget. Show me everything else. Show me your kids' pastor and their team, event planning. Show me the budget for that, and then show me what you spend Monday through Friday. Not that anything, dude, blow it out on Sunday, man. Make it the coolest, funnest, most interesting, great, whatever. Preach the Bible, please, but do your thing. Preach the Bible, would you please? But do that. Do your thing. I have no issue with that. But if that's all you care about, why are they going to care about something different? You do groups because you're supposed to. It's growth track, and you do that because it's, discover your purpose, find freedom, make a difference, because you copy and paste that from Church of the Highlands, and you do it because you do it. You're not in one probably. How many pastors, Tim? If we had 100, how many go weekly to a group? How many of them? You know what I'm saying?
Weekly to a group.
Weekly to a group of other people, you know what I'm saying? And maybe it's more. Yeah. And I struggle at times. And I'm not throwing judgment. I'm making observations. That number's low. It's lower than we want it to be, my guy, especially the church staffs in general. And so don't rail on people for being culture Christians when our evangelical big box church conveyor belt is what we are making them into. Our machine makes a product, and we're mad at the product.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? So I don't know. I don't know. And I'm a part of it. I'm a part of the problem probably at some point. And and I'm here. And let's make a change, because I think discipleship matters. But I want you to be growing. But you and I both know with explosive growth, it's very uncommon for there to be explosive discipleship, because Jesus kind of showed us. It took 3 years with 12 of these dudes, and there was only a couple hundred people with them at the end there. And you and I know no one wants just a couple hundred people. Everybody wants to be Mike Todd. Everybody wants the big deal. Everybody wants that thing. And I'm not saying that's all bad. I think a big crowd's awesome. There's nothing problem with that. I want people pouring in. I want to have to cut a hole in the ceiling and drop a paralyzed guy through and have miracles happen, man. I'm all about it. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's something that I think something of what you're talking about is pastors need to be relatable. And a big shift that's going is, like, a lot of pastors are no longer relatable to their own people. And let me, when you're talking, it just kind of reminded me of this parallel that I've been seeing recently. And it's really been interesting. And I'm not going to say any of this is fact. I'm going to say this is stuff that I personally just observed over the past couple of years. So I'm not saying any of this is boxed in, full disclosure. This is just what I've seen. So I know I love meeting pastors. I love talking to pastors. I love going to pastors' churches and touring their building and, like, just getting to know them as people. And I've noticed this really weird correlation between pastors who, when they get passionate, they almost accidentally swear and they, like, stop themselves, and church growth. All right, let me explain this. Let me unpack this a bit. So the pastors that I've seen that are very cookie cutter, that are very like, you look at them and you're just like, do they even sin at all ever? Like, of course they do because they're human, but like I would never know. Like, they're like cookie cutter perfect family. Nothing wrong with that. Just saying. Like, I'm just saying what I see. I'm just saying what I see. So, and a lot of those pastors that I know have been struggling lately. And I don't like to see pastors struggle, but struggling with growth. They're like, their churches aren't growing as fast as they want them to. And the pastors that I see who like up talking, they get passionate and they accidentally let like an F-bomb slip or like almost, and they catch themselves. Those are the ones I see that their congregations are growing like crazy. And it makes me think like these people, I think they're just relatable. People feel like when they speak, it's speaking from a place of this person here, they know my situation. And they're speaking truth to something that I can relate to. And it makes them grow. I was watching this pastor, Rick Wilkerson Jr.,
that's right.
His Mature Me podcast. Love that podcast. It's so good. He had Philip. Oh my gosh, what's his name? The pastor of 2819
Anthony
Church.
Mitchell.
Yeah, him. And he's talking about a situation where he slipped up on stage and he brought up a hot topic that a lot of people didn't like, and people, his family started getting like threatening messages, and he's like, you messed with my family, I still got, and he stopped himself and he changed his words and he said, I still got some hood in me. And I'm like, a lot of people know what you're gonna say, and I'm like, but their church is growing like crazy. And so I've just noticed this weird correlation with people who are like edgy, not cookie cutter people, and like they're just relatable. And I think I watched a lot of your clips before we're hopping on this pod, and a lot of what people talk about is how to communicate better to your congregation. And it's like, and this has kind of been an overall topic. It's like, you can't communicate with your congregation in an authentic way if you don't know where they're at, and you have a hard time relating to their life and to their story and everything. And so I don't know. It's just a very weird correlation that I've noticed recently. Nothing is based in fact, but I'm just make that very clear. I'm not saying you have to swear to be a good.
That's what I heard you say, and that's the clip that I'm going to use. So just prepare for that. And the day you plant, I'll be putting that on social media. No, I agree with what you say in terms of. I bet you do. And authenticity matters. And so when you say edgy, I love that, because if you're trying to be edgy for edge's sake, people can smell that coming a mile away. And the church, the pastors that I'm referring to, that's just that cringe factor. But and I think it was actually, was it Philip Anthony Mitchell? No, it was Dr. Darius Daniels. I don't know if you know him. I'm forgetting the name of his church. One of my favorite pastors to listen to. And he talks about the difference between our humanity and the flesh. Your humanity is not sinful. The flesh, shrouded in your humanity, and there's a give and take. There's this constant battle until we're on the other side of glory. St. Paul talks about it. I do what I don't want to do. I don't do what I'm supposed to do. That's the flesh. But then there's our humanity. Our humanity is not wrong. And so I think what I hear you saying, it's those that we can see their humanity.
Yeah.
And make the gospel accessible and make it feel like, hey, I can belong here too. And not this whole humanism, right? They're still the Bible. They're still the truth. They're still the one way, the one truth, the one life. They're still the door. They're still the gate. They're still the guy. His name is Jesus, and you got to go through him, right?
100%. 100%. But
what I think Jesus did, and those that came after him, is the humanity, that the table flipping when he was brokenhearted about Lazarus, when he showed his brokenness and revealed his humanity, not his sin. He never did. He was perfect. Mm-hmm. So to your point, I don't think you have to get up there on stage and sin, but I think revealing the humanity and then teaching the biblical narrative, and if you can intersect those and coalesce where our humanity meets in the pages of Scripture and how it takes us to a different place, and it takes us to the eternal, it takes us to the sanctification, this process that you and I are going through, There's no process without humanity. And if you hide people from that, and I get some pastors hiding people from that because there is a sacred thing. There is this, I don't want you to think you can do what I did and become what I've become. I'll never forget my mom. She did a lot of teaching at the church, and she would say she never really talked about her past that much. And she grew up in church, nothing crazy, but she had some rough patches. And I asked her, hey, why don't you ever talk about these things? People relate to things. She said, I never want people to think, especially young people, they can do what I did and then be where I am. Which was very interesting to me because it's not a counter to your point, but it was interesting because I'm the guy, I'm you. Mm-hmm. Premarital sex, drugs, alcohol, partying, me, broken. I had my prodigal son years. I did those things. And I want you to know that that wasn't right for me, but it happened, and I can't change those things. But to that thing as well, like, hey, there's some oversharing that we can do, and people can be like, hey, I'm kind of in my prodigal. I'm in my wild oat season 2. I'll get to Jesus later, right? So there is that kind of that balance of, your audience is not your therapist, but... there's a quality to sharing your humanity. I don't know how we share the gospel without our humanity. And I think the best preachers are the ones that you can feel that they're still grateful for being rescued.
Yeah.
Right? There's that, like that Philip Anthony Mitchell is one of those guys. And Rich Wilkerson Jr., those guys. They're great leaders. They build organizations. They grow churches. They have parking. They have buildings. They do all these things. But when you hear them teach, they're still grateful for being rescued, and they want to, in turn, rescue others in whatever way possible. I think when we lose that and it just feels obtuse, it feels like I get you're teaching me, and you're on the stage, you're doing these things, but it feels like you're just reading. It feels like it's inhuman. And so I think I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. For TED Talk, TED Talks, and the best TED Talks pastors. Yeah, the best TED Talks are the ones that there's the humanity all over. I don't know, because that's for me. I'm a storyteller by nature. I want, and most of my stories are going to be real life stories, right? And so, and that's how I connect to the audience. How I connect to the Holy Spirit, and so that's me. So for you, are you a teacher, preacher, a storyteller? If you were to define your teaching in one, give an assignment, what would you be?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a interesting mix of preacher and storyteller. I often do you know the comedian Hassan Minhaj? Super famous comedian. He got into some
Hassan
trouble for like
the skinny guy. He had a show. Did he have a show? Yeah. Hassan. Yeah.
So it's kind of like I feel
love
like
him.
my
So
actual
great.
speaking. Yeah, I feel like my speaking style is a little bit to that, where he can really energetic, moves around the stage a lot. Raises his voice, but he captivates his audience through storytelling, and energy. So I feel like I'm kind of like that, where I'm like a mix between like preaching and but also storytelling, and then I love to mix in some just straight teaching, where it's like I kind of pause the animation, I pause the stories, and I'll be like, let's learn this fact in the Bible real quick.
Right.
I did this in a youth message just like last month, where I taught the entire youth. I'm blanking on the actual Greek term because I do not know Greek or Hebrew, but I learned it for this message. It was Jesus' last words on the cross. And there's been a couple viral clips going around where people talk about it, but everyone always gets confused because his last words, he starts off with my God, why have you forsaken me? And people don't, people think that he's like complaining that the God's forsaken Jesus, and everyone's just like, whoa, what's up with that? They don't realize he's quoting a psalm,
right.
And he's just quoting to bring full circle moment. But the last words he says is it is finished. And I forget the word for word Greek translation on that, but basically it was a term used as to say that courts would use, like public law courts would use to say your sentence has been completed, you are free,
right.
Like it is done. You are completely free of this crime for the rest of your life.
Right.
And war generals would also use it as a way of saying the battle's won. And so that was the same word that he was using on the cross, signifying that like our sins have been forgiven and we are free. And through him, through what he's doing on the cross, our sins are free. And so that was like a full circle symbolism moment where he said, it is finished, which on the surface level, it makes sense. It is finished, that I've passed on, and all this. And, I'll be back, but like,
I'll be back.
This humanly suffering that I'm going through is it is finished, and so that makes sense. It's kind of like a double entendre, but there's the deeper meaning behind it. And so I went through this storytelling, like energetic. It's youth, so you got to kick up the energy a little even more.
It up.
Right. But then I paused and I'm just like, hey, let's all learn some Greek together.
Right.
And I broke it down. And everyone that night, I'm pretty sure they all forgot it by now, but everyone that night was like speaking that word, that Greek word, and I'm just like, dude, this is Tetelestai. That's what it is.
Tetelestai. That's right. Tetelestai. That's right.
And so it's just, I feel like the best communicators I see can kind of, they have their thing that they, their staple, the thing that they always come back to, which for me is like, preaching. I love preaching. I love passionate. But I feel like the best communicators I see on stage kind of mix the three, just like Jesus did, Jesus mixed the three.
Right. That's so good. Well, maybe this is the first of many conversations around this, man. I know you share a similar heart to help the church tell her story and have them easily found, and then when people get there to have a great experience. And so, tell if pastors listening, how do they find you, and just a little bit about what you do, and if they were going to reach out to you, how could they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The name you see here, Timothy Alcorn, that's my personal Instagram handle. I run a nonprofit called Social Ground Foundation. We have a media wing, Social Ground Media, and we help nonprofits and churches tell their story through the use of their online presence. And so our main focus comes back to social media, which is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Social media is how do you tell your story through social media? 'Cause social media is all the things online. And so we help nonprofits and churches tell their story online through the use of video, through the use of graphics, text, photography, all of those things. And so, we do paid partnerships where we handle social media for other people, but also I just love hopping on calls with people and I love visiting and just consulting. And oftentimes I'll meet with the church's creative team, which is usually made up of, a couple staff members, mostly volunteers. And I study their social media and their website beforehand, and I go in with all my suggestions and teach them how to implement it. And I don't charge for that because I just love doing that. That is my thing. I hyper obsess over this. So
that's awesome.
That's me.
Well, reach out to him if you need help. Thank you, Tim, so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is a blast.